Hello, it's Paul Clegg here on Somerset Marketing Hub, and today we're going to be talking about a subject that follows on from some of the marketing discussions that we've been having. We've talked about the importance if you've got a new service, if you're starting up in business, or whether you've got an existing business, you need an audience. You need to define what that audience should look like. In other words, you need to get in front of people who are more than likely to want the service or product that you have. You then need to create some level of engagement, because people don't buy on the first occasion. In fact, 82% of sales take place after the seventh touch. So you need to be thinking in advance. How are you going to engage? How are you going to stay in touch with people? And sadly, most businesses don't stay in touch. They'll meet somebody at a networking event, or somebody will come onto their website, but they have no way of holding them and bringing them back to that website, or getting in touch with them after a networking meeting, or indeed doing so. And that is sad, and that's where a lot of businesses leak. The third area, of course, is the sale and getting paid for that sale. And the fourth area is building business for the future by delivering a really fantastic service, delivering a service that they don't expect, or delivering what we call a wow. And that's the subject that I wanted to talk about today. I've asked everybody on the call to think about, what do they put in place to wow their customer after that person's bought that product or service? And if they haven't, and many people haven't, what could we be doing? So it's more of a brainstorming session. Now, I thought I'd kick off by saying I found a very interesting quote. I've been listening to Mike Dillard's podcast. I like Mike Dillard's podcast. I'd recommend it to anybody here. He gets some really good guests on. And this last week, he's had Jay Abraham, who's probably one of the highest paid business consultants in the world. He always delivers great content. And he said something that resonated with me. And he says, as entrepreneurs, he said, well, there's two things that I think could get us into this mindset. As entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to fall in love with our product, our service, our business, the market we're in, when really we should be falling in love with our client. I don't mean realistically, I mean metaphorically. We should be falling in love with our client and how our product or service can impact their business and indeed their life. So if you reverse it, it's about it's really another way of saying it's not about us, it's about your client and falling in love with the client. And I don't know about anybody here, but I deal with lots of people in the high street. I do it with lots of businesses, but I never really feel loved. I really don't. And the second thing that he said was he always uses the word client. And I must admit, I've always been confused when I'm writing out to people as to whether to refer to people's customers, the people they deal business with, as customers or clients. And he said he always defines the people he's dealing with as clients, because the definition of the word customer is, according to Webster's dictionary, is one that purchases a commodity or service, whereas the definition of a client is, number one is under the protection of another. So that person is looking after that particular person in a special way, or a person who engages the professional advice or services of another. It's very, very subtle, that, but almost a customer is one of many and therefore treated as one of many, whereas a client seems to be treated a little bit more special. So I want to kick off and open up the call with one example. When I was in the hair and beauty industry for many, many years, and when I started out on my own, I had a very, very good friend from that industry, somebody I had the occasion to visit. I think it was near Aylesbury. He had a business called 365, and it was a marketing organization for the hairdressing industry. In fact, it was 365 because it was 365 days a year service, and he charged £365, which I thought was quite a year, which was quite good. £1 a day, it was quite easy. But they selected their clients, and they helped them with their marketing and get more marketing orientated. And then he brought out a product range called Paul Mitchell. You may know the brand if you regularly visit salons. At the time, it really swept in quite well amongst these salons. They had it exclusively. And they bought this range of products. And if you know what happens in the salons, the owner will order, or the manager will order, and it tends to be the juniors, the apprentices, who unpack it and then dust it off and put it out. And with every box that he sent, somewhere in with the polystyrene, or I think he used popcorn then, so it was environmentally friendly. Somewhere there was a little pack and a card, and it says, "Thank you for unpacking our products with care. We'd like you to have this, these biscuits, or we'd like you to, when you take a break, we'd like you to think of us." And it would be a little box, a little pack of Kit Kats, Bounties, whatever, I can't remember. And it was all, I still remember it to this day, and I'm sure salons do. And as far as I was aware, they continued that for as long as he was involved with that business. Didn't cost a lot, big ticket item for the order, but a small little gift of a wow. So the wow doesn't need to be that costly. So would anybody like to start about how they wow, either during their engagement stage or particularly after when somebody least expects it? What is it we do, or what is it we've been thinking of doing that could produce that wow? Because it could make the world a difference in helping you stand out. Anybody like to begin?
I'll have a go.
I tell everybody we've got this marketing crew that are on the cutting edge of marketing. It's like having a marketing department without the expense. Rod, go on.
I mean, from the moment I meet a client, I like to wow them all the way. And I think it's important to be empathetic. Obviously, in my business, you've got to be empathetic with them. You've got to be genuine. You know, it's no good saying I'm sorry for your loss and, you know, smiling. You've got to mean it. And even if you're on the phone, you've got to adopt that approach. And then when you get to see them, I agree with the gentleman you talked about. All my customers are not customers, they're clients. And I need to know who the client is as well, because that's the person I keep in contact with. And I upfront apologize, that you may feel I keep in touch with you too much, but I don't think you can keep in touch with someone too much, especially when you're talking about a sensitive issue like this. And it's important for me to follow that process all the way through. I've got a tick sheet that I use, as you probably know, Paul, in my file, and I have to adopt and follow that to the letter and make sure they know that everything is all sorted. And in fact, I go as far as prior to the funeral, so the day before the funeral, I ring them up and speak to them and discuss the funeral, what's going to happen the next day, and reassure them that everything is in line and everything is all going to go as smooth as clockwork. And this will allow them to move on, because it's a great big lump in the road, a funeral. It's a massive thing, really. And there's a lot of relief when that's finished. And then, of course,
it's a stressful time for the person that you're dealing with. So I know you're particularly sensitive. There was something you used to tell me about how you used to discuss the event that was going to happen that was customer centric. You used to. Was it the way that the celebrant would need the information needed for the celebrant?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the important thing is when you're discussing the funeral arrangements, obviously the most important person on the day of the funeral, because the funeral director has done his job by the day of the funeral, but the celebrant has to stand up and is the master of ceremonies. So what I say to them all is that my celebrant will come and talk to you, and we'll get the shape, the taste, the flavor of that person, whether it's humor, whether it's something that happened when they were a kid, whether it's something, and most people don't think that their loved one's ever done anything in their life. But what we discover and uncover is that they've done quite a lot, really. And it has to be remembered that a funeral is a celebration of someone's life that's just died. So those things are important when you're delivering your overall package, even though that person is delivering that part of it.
Certainly, certainly the way you handle that situation is resulting in some very good testimonials. And I know you asked for those, but is there anything else that you do or you think you might be able to do after the event? And I'm not thinking about anything particularly gimmicky. I know one Christmas you sent everybody a card and wishing them well, and that backfired in some cases.
Oh, that was a nightmare. Yeah, my auntie died last week.
Thinking about loving the client. That client, in my experience of funerals, is not so much the time between the death and the ceremony, because they're very busy trying to organize things and everybody's around them. The difficult period is after the event, when everybody's gone, and it's like a bit of an anticlimax. Is there anything that could be done there? You know, do you do anything? Do you make a follow-up phone call apart from asking for a testimonial?
I mean, obviously, I then go back most of the time and deliver ashes and things like that. And I will sit. I won't be in a rush when I'm delivering ashes. I won't be in a rush for lots of different reasons. And each individual client is different. Some take more of my time, and some take less of my time. Just depends. But I think you must be prepared to sit and have a cup of tea and a chinwag, because they are in a very difficult situation. You know, they've been married for 60 years and the love of their life has just died. It's an awful scenario for them, and you know, their family swans around them, and then all of a sudden they're not there anymore. So it is incredibly difficult, and so I try not to. This is not when I major on my testimonials, although I do ask for it, but at an appropriate moment. But it's all about them and not about me, and I think that's something the crematorium has learned from me, that client facing is very important. It's not about the funeral director, it's about the client, it's about the family, it's about moving on, you know. And I think, you know, when I first started, it was very funeral director centric almost. You know, it's almost like the funeral director was this big conductor. I mean, in big companies they call the funeral director the conductor. So it's a strange thing, but you know, the big funeral directors in this area would keep their people all outside until they were ready to open the doors. To me, it was too funeral director centric. I wanted it to be client centric, family centric, friends, colleagues, and we needed our celebrant to touch them all, you know, when delivering the ceremony.
I think also it's difficult when somebody's lost somebody. There's that vacant period where, in fairness, a lot of people just don't know what to say, and therefore it might be difficult for them to. You know, some people are better at it than others and will support that person. Anybody else inspired by Rod? I think Ewan, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think Rod has sparked some ideas. I think what we try and do is, I have been on both sides of the fence from a marketing point of view. I've been both a client and I've been an agency. And what we try and do is do the things that always used to frustrate me that agencies didn't do. So just little things like, if we're doing an outbound campaign, you know, so if it's Google or if it's anything like that, what we try and do is we try and provide, like, and it sounds like you should do it anyway, but proper forecasts of what we would expect, because it's amazing how many people don't. And I know a lot of people that we're dealing with now are not used to dealing with marketing companies, but it's amazing how marketing companies don't. So I do that because I think that's something that you should do, but it's amazing that it's actually something that a lot don't do. And I think also what we also do is, when we're doing things, is we constantly keep people updated, is to try and keep people updated as how they're doing. So if we're running a campaign, we do weekly monitoring reports that we send over that says, this is your campaign, it's doing great, you know, or it's not doing great and this is what we're trying to do. Again, it sounds like it's something that you should do as standard, but actually it's amazing how many people don't. And then the other thing, to give an example of what Kelly's doing recently, Kelly wrote some copy for an automotive repair company back in August. And at the end of the August, and we haven't done any work with them since the beginning of August. At the end of August, Kelly sent just an email over just saying, I've done a little bit of research just to tell you, just to show you, that you're doing some great response in terms of your page rankings, and you're starting to rank for these certain things. Now, from my point of view, that's something that I would never have got from an agency, because what they do is they pick you up and they drop you. So it's about, and it's, for us, it keeps the conversation open, but also genuinely, it's about saying, we're trying to help, we're genuinely trying to help you. And this is hopefully an example of how your business is seeing the benefit of that and keeping that in front of mind for them. So that's the sort of thing. It's very difficult in terms of gimmicky things for us, because we don't, because it's not like, I think I always remember the one you talked about with the hairdressing. It's difficult to do those small gimmicky things, but I think by doing things that augment your service, I think that's something that can really help.
And the other thing I think we mentioned earlier, Paul, is so whenever I take on a project with a new website, or it's kind of where that business is going and where they want to go in the future. So, like Suisa, we've had a really big chat about where you want to go, so that I don't just build something that suits you for now. It's something that can actually help you in the future. So you don't spend your money building something and then go, right, a year later, I can't do anything with it. It needs to still be able to plug in. So I think, even when I did the online booking system with the team, they were kind of wanted to know where they were going in future, and then I gave them a solution that would work short term, and if they liked it, they wanted something they could have monthly. So I researched which solutions we could have on a monthly basis, so that in the event that after 2 or 3 months they decide not to run the courses anymore, they can take it down, or if they like it, it was financially viable for them to just take on that solution. So do try and think through where they're going.
I think that Ewan's comment there about gimmicky, I think we all want to avoid gimmicky. I don't think Paul Mitchell, I don't think it was gimmicky. I think it was actually being client-centric. It was thinking about what is that when that parcel arrives, what is the first thing they're going to do? These are people that are very often taken for granted, and this is saying, I'm still thinking of you. And you going back to that motor parts people were saying about thinking of them. I was for quite a number of years, I was general manager of Weller. I've done a stint on both the retail division and the hairdressing division, which is the bigger division. And it's generally assumed that general managers are so bright at everything. And the last thing I was ever interested in was finance. As I've told you before, we had financial people for their accountants, etc. And I used to call their advice better people than I. But I had a client called Sam Hext, and it was amazing. He would find something obscure out of the Financial Times about some international share price or dealings that were happening in Europe related to the hairdressing industry, and he would cut it out. He would put PC on the top. He would hand it to his assistant, and I'd get it the next day. And I very often, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, I'd get these handwritten envelopes, terrible handwriting. I'd open them and I'd get this financial report, which of no interest whatsoever to me. However, he was taking the trouble to think of me. And the minute I opened it, I was thinking of him. And I've inadvertently adopted that many times, because if I've got somebody, and Rod will attest to this, if I see something that I think could be of interest to him and his business, if it's an article, say recently, in fact, I sent to you, and I sent you an article yesterday as well about unemployment. If I ended up thinking of somebody so-and-so would find this useful, I would actually send it. Now I do it by email nowadays, but actually cutting an article out and sending it by post could be even more powerful. So it's about thinking of that person. So no, it doesn't have to be gimmicky. It's got to come from a genuine being in love with your clients and thinking of, having the outward thoughts. Has it stimulated any other thoughts about what we may do, or what we might be doing already for Mark or Joe? Joe?
I think a lot of time it's about adding further value and thinking, as Kelly said, about the future and how you can perhaps, I guess it's upselling in the way. If they've asked you to do a certain task, can you then make that into perhaps a bigger task, or a task that's done on a weekly or monthly basis, and by researching and spending a little bit more of your own time to say, have you thought about doing it this way, or perhaps if we did this in the future it might benefit your business.
Yep. Yeah. I think Ewan mentioned something about, you know, once an agency has lost your business, that's it, they forget you. And I think that's the most dangerous time, because 82% of business takes place 7 touches down the track. So you've got to think to yourself, if I'm here and the business is 7 touches away, how am I going to make those touches? My eldest son is creative head for the London part of Publicis. Can't remember which agency, but they got into the final pitch, and Tim was leading the pitch for the Samsung account last Thursday. So I said, how did it go? They're up against Bartle, Bogle and Hegarty. And he said it was great to be with clients again, and they felt they'd done a good pitch. They don't know yet the result. But he sent me a little video of, I can't show it here, won't show it here, but when the client left the agency, they'd commissioned a digital billboard, and it showed you this GIF of this little fat lad down a corridor in a college in America, and it said, it's going to be great to work with you. It's going to be great to work with you. And I thought that was a nice little afters touch, you know. Now that's just, you may say that's a little bit gimmicky, but they've gone away thinking, well, these people, they're thinking through the afters. But of course, it's what happens from now through to their decision. You've got to wait for that decision, I suppose. But yes, Ewan.
Just on that, just as a little aside, there's a very famous one from the ad world, which was back in the 80s, I think, or 80s or 90s, and an agency, and it may have been BBH or one of those, was pitching for British Rail as it was then. So the client comes into the offices, and he sits down, and the offices, there's rubbish everywhere. There's literally rubbish everywhere. There's dust everywhere. There's open sandwich packets everywhere else. And the client comes into the pitch, and he's in a really bad mood. And the client said to him, the client said to the agency, this is terrible. You know, why are you treating me like this? And the agency said, that's the way that you're treating your train passengers at the moment. What we're going to do is show you how you can change change everything. And they got the business. And I remember at university, it was taught to me that that's what happened. And it was interesting because it's such a small thing, and it could have backfired terribly, but it showed that the agency had really thought about his customer, and what their task was to change that point of view. So it's just a little aside.
Yeah, I heard that story, but the receptionist said, "Oh, the owner of it, the person you're asking for, will be out in a minute," and they kept them waiting and didn't tell
that was
them.
it. Yeah. So it's.
And as the guy's walking away, he said, "Hang on a second. Just let me just say that's the way your clients have been treated." And that's a very good way. I think the things that we're talking about, the wows, don't need to be much, like thinking of somebody. So and sending them something that might be relevant. I suppose that is also the nature of getting somebody as subscribed to a list, but less and less people are perhaps doing that. So it could be that if we've got people that we're trying to nurture in a particular sector. So for instance, in Joe's case, people that you've lost or people that that you're trying to nurture, actually not automating it at this stage, but actually sending the odd article out. Saw this the other day and thought it might be very useful in terms of productivity or whatever. Just nice, short, pithy bits, but not feeling as if it's automated. That could be quite useful. I think a handwritten card is the most powerful if only people would use it. I think Barry was due on here. I was going to suggest that, it could be well worthwhile. Postcards, for instance, could be having postcards, not publicity postcards, postcards with thoughts, sayings, whatever on them, and just a quick little note sent off. But if not that, a text or an email to make people think about, how they're thinking.
Just one from me. I mean, my week is built around Wednesday market. My week, I make sure I try not to do anything on a Wednesday, because that's when, unlike the other market traders, they're trying to sell something. I'm just trying to sell me. And when I talk to people, they can be clients that I've already got that are funeral plan holders who will sit on the stall with me and quite happily talk to other people that haven't got a plan with me and do my job for me. I can quite happily talk to a widow or a widower, and I can almost always remember their name. I mean, sometimes it's difficult, so I might be all right, love, or all right, mate, but I try not to be. And I think that market store isn't about selling necessarily a product or a service. It's about selling me, and it's about engaging with lots of different people. And when you're bored, and sometimes you can get bored on there, you can have a laugh by engaging people that look funny in all sorts of ways. So I have a great time on a Wednesday, I really do. A lot of people think you're sat there for 5 hours. I mean, a lady that used to do some work for me there, you know, she'd take a word search book. When I found out from the bookseller that, you know, she was doing a word search, she's supposed to be on my store engaging people. So then we had a bit of a laugh about engagement, but sometimes, see, some people don't understand engagement, whereas when you're sat on a market store, you can easily engage almost everybody if you really want to, because they're looking to be engaged, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're looking to be married, but most of the time it's engagement.
Are there any other thoughts that's stimulated what you could do? Mark, how about you?
I think, given where I am, it's, I think the thing that I try and do is sort of put a lot of stuff out there on social media that will be sort of helpful to small businesses. So giving that kind of information out there is almost like giving something back. And the other thing that I really think sort of maybe sets me apart is that from a lot of people in my position, when you deal with me, it's me that does everything for you.
All right.
And a lot of people will outsource in my world. A lot of people outsource a lot of stuff.
Well, maybe when you get to become a massive company, you might need to outsource and employ people. However, and I commented before everybody came online that you're putting out a lot of content on LinkedIn. But I'm going to ask you a searching question, which is meant for everybody here, by the way, including me.
Embrace myself.
You could probably list, and you hopefully you've got it digitally, of all the people that you've been talking to about bit more specifically about doing business with you. How are you staying in touch with them? What are you doing specially for them?
Yeah, I probably could do more.
Most of us can. So, for instance, I'll let you know what I did with. I pulled these 21 people into the system. And while I was doing it, I actually did a short recording. I thought it'd be useful elsewhere of how I did it. Bearing in mind that these people are about networking, and we're in a networking environment. And I'd said during the meeting that the key to it was staying in touch. And there I was writing. I was sending an email to people that was saying, let's stay in touch. It's quite key. So I was emphasizing the message. And I put in it, you might be interested to see what I've done with the data and how I've used it. So I put that video in there as some added value. Now, I've had quite a few responses from that, more than I would normally get. But my question to me now is, how do I stay, and I've got one today and 2 on Friday. I've got 3 one-to-one calls that they requested. And my question to me is, how could I now stay in touch with those 21 people? Now, one way is in the little video, I promoted their networking event. It's a good event. It's about 2 hours long, but it's a good event. And so what I'm going to do with that little video, I'm going to put that into some sort of blog. But what can I do with those individuals? That's the question. How can I make a difference there? Now, I wouldn't necessarily want to do it with 21, but there could be some people. I mean, my first thought was to try and get some of those people on there onto this call for the benefit of everybody here. So it's all very well giving out all this stuff to everybody, but people want to be made to feel special. So what you could do is you could list the people you've been trying to do business with. And if, let's say, you've been talking about the zero system, if you've done a particular post about zero on LinkedIn, you could actually write them a little personalized note and say, I was thinking of you the other day, we were talking about zero. You might find this particular article of interest. Now that's at its basic form. But that could be, in other words, don't.
You're frozen. Come back, Paul.
I love it. It just stops on down.
There?
Now, see what you've done now, Mark. Oh,
We'll let Rod take the show on for a moment.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, this is not you, Rod.
No, that's right. I'm in the clear on this occasion.
I think he won't know. The organiser has experienced technical difficulties. Unless he joins, will end in 60 minutes.
Oh my God.
Rod, tell us a story while we wait. You're full of stories. I love Rod's stories.
Well, I thought the gimmicky thing, when Paul mentioned it to me ages back, I got some of these memory boxes, then I got scatter tubes, and I hate upselling. In the funeral business, there's no chance I'm going to upsell anybody. I try and do everything the way I would want it done to me. So I put everything in packages, so I haven't got to talk about more expensive this or more expensive that. I wouldn't dream of overstepping the mark, especially on the financial front. It's been Scott for the check. So I think it's very difficult. I think all you can do is wow people with, for me anyway, with the service you can give them. Paul's gone. He's going to come back, I reckon. But
I think that's a really important point, because I think upselling and Paul might disagree, but I think upselling is really difficult, and it's really difficult because if you sound like you're selling to some people, don't like to be sold to generally.
No.
So I think if by doing what Paul's saying, I think if you naturally are able to wow them and show the benefit, hopefully the upselling will come naturally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in fact, sometimes I get asked about all sorts of things, and it's normally instead of a cremation, the burial, and it's all about stonemasons and lettering and stuff like that. And I straight away, I don't even bother with it. I hand it on. I just put it straight onto the stonemason, because otherwise, if I get involved, I've got to mark it up, haven't I? And if I've got to mark it up, it's also going to take my time up, and it's not something I'm really interested in. I'd rather get on to doing something that I want to do, because I don't know anything about stonemasonry really, and I don't know anything about lettering. I can give them a bit of advice and I find signposting is the best way for me on that front.
Well, some of your spelling's not so hot, Rod, so I'd hate you to be carving something in stone.
Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, RPI doesn't go down well.
No.
Yeah. Now, I was saying that Zoisa's camera had frozen. It was mine. I lost the connection completely. I was in a bit of a blind panic there, but I assume you all carried on, so that's all right. Did I miss anything?
No.
Talking what other bits Rod does to wow people, because I think the thing you do, Rob, when you text people to say that you've picked up mum or dad or her word, and I think that's a really nice thing to let them know that it's in your care, because you don't get that. You wouldn't normally get that. They would just tell you, we'll pick them up, and the next time you see it will be when you're on the way to the crematorium. So I think that's a really nice thing that you do.